I was in the midst of working on a whole different video, but then I saw another video of Pleasant Kenobi dropping when it comes to the discussion around card sleeves, playmats, and overall designs that should be or should not be allowed in a given card space because, what would the women think? What would the children think? Etc. And ultimately, I understand the idea that we can't just have pornographic images in places where children can be. But I think there's definitely a distinction that needs to be drawn because I feel like there's a lot of potential moral panic and personal feelings in relation to this entirety of the story, because I feel like at this point we're treating all of this like it's the same. There is no nuance, and I don't believe it's coming from Pleasant Kenobi's side. He made a point of how there is legitimate arguments to both sides. The problem is that when we look at these people who want to argue against it, they always have the same token. Let's get into it. Now, when it comes to this, I want to give a quick histrionics of something that comes to me in card games, because those who know me know I'm a giant anime fan, of course. I'm an anime YouTuber. But in relation to that, there's a playmat that I had early on during my college days that was pretty tame. I'm going to pull it up right here on the screen. This is Mocha from Rosario Plus Vampire. For the longest time, she was my favorite female character in anime. As long as I can remember, about to high school. And this is the playmat I would take to me everywhere I go for any kind of card games. I usually just played Magic for the longest time, but also Yu-Gi-Oh! And as you can see, there's nothing really smutty about this playmat. There's a pretty tame playmat compared to what people talk about. And I remember somebody in my college who I did not like, I forget his name to this day, but I'll never forget that we were just minding my own business, playing Game of Command with my friends, and this guy was kind of in that group of Magic players of the campus, UMBC, shout out to the Golden Retrievers, who came up and decided out of nowhere, because we kind of had like a beef, but like we didn't really vocalize it, we just definitely did not like each other, and he looks at my playmat and said, "That is a trashy waifu playmat." And I looked at him like, "I'll show you a trashy waifu playmat." Now, one of my best friends who you guys should go check out is a streamer named Black Rose Zombie right on Twitch, is a graphic design person. So she usually helps me out every now and then with some thumbnails or helps me out in other art-based projects. And when it came to this, I asked her to help me create what I would call the ultimate waifu playmat. And I made it in the style in which I asked her, I want you to treat it like a fighting game screen with all the different characters and hexagonal shapes. As I pull it up on the screen right now, as you can see, this was the playmat. And I basically came back when about 2 weeks later after getting it ordered and sized and just dropped it, be like, how about that for a waifu playmat? And I rode this thing for a long time before I eventually got what I call the waifu playmat DLC. Now, I'm not the only one who has these kind of unique artistic playmats that I've kind of helped create in the mindset of my ideas, but I'm not the art one. I have another one that I gave to my girlfriend, who is also a big Liliana fan, as I am, and I basically got this playmat for her birthday, where I had another graphic design friend commission this job. And the point being is that people will look at some of these characters and these arts, especially I'll show you one of my other ones that I have coming along the way for just yellow, or as in bombastic blondes in anime, another pull up on the screen, and I look at it, it's like, that's a little cringy. Do you ever touch a woman? And I hear all these bullshit arguments when it comes to the ability to express what I like, express some of my favorite characters, because while they are great eye candy, there's still more depth to all these characters if you know anything about them. And in relation to the idea of when it comes to a game store, personally, I think there's a misunderstanding of what comes to comfortability and accessibility. People have access to the local game store. People have the ability to go there and want to engage with the community, but their comfortability level is completely personal. What you find comfortable is not going to be the same as other people. And while there is the difference in terms of children, when you have people under the age, I would say 12 and 13, because Magic is considered a 12 to 13 card game, certain things I can understand, but you should also know that the accessibility of the local game store extends beyond just your circle, extends beyond the age range you're comfortable with. And in relation to that, as also an educator, I understand now when it comes to doing this for over 3 years, there's definitely degrees when it comes to how we must gauge exposure to the young mind. But in relation to what Pleasant Kenobi was saying, yes, there's absolutely some cards in Magic that if you want to give the most bad faith argument to exposure to children, be it murder, be it other kind of kill spells, grabs, unlawful contact, however you want to call it. We can go down the rabbit hole of bad faith arguments. But I believe we also can't ignore the bad faith arguments about people's personal comfortability. There's a sense of entitlement that I've noticed when it comes to people who want to go into these spaces, these nerd spaces, and dictate what this should be allowed because of what they personally find uncomfortable. And newsflash, we don't care. It is not our responsibility to make sure that you're comfortable. It is not my job to make sure that you feel safe because I'm not mostly interacting with you. I would probably ignore you more than likely than not, because when I go to an LGS, I'm going for one or two reasons. I'm going there to get my grind in for Friday Night Magic, or I'm already seeing the homies that I know. Have I made friends before in the course of being an LGS? Sure. Commander nights, sealed nights, pre-release. We've made all kinds of connections, but I don't necessarily go there to make sure other people feel comfortable, because I'm not going on my way to make people uncomfortable. I'm just there to play a card game. And if I want some artistic style to my deck, be it sleeves or a playmat, I'm entitled to that too. And of course, this brings to a bigger point that at the end of Pleasant Kenobi we didn't really go into, but I know he's talked about this in the past. And it's that making spaces like this more feasible, comfortable, or inviting to women, and women who want to be in these nerd spaces. And personally, I don't find a problem with women in any form of nerd spaces. What I think a lot of male gamers, male nerds, however you want to phrase them, have the problem with is that they come into those spaces and then start dictating how those spaces should operate, how they should run. And that's just not how it works. You can't come into a place that would say is relatively new or you're not as experienced in, and then try to say what isn't good. No one would take anyone seriously who just started a job for maybe 2 or 3 months and try to tell people who've been there for years how they're doing it wrong. This is inefficient. We should do this, be more inclusive. Whatever kind of phrasing you want to say to justify why what your way is superior to people who've already been in the game. Now, does it sound like I'm gatekeeping? Absolutely. I am a pro gatekeeper. But I have gatekeeping explained in one of my more popular videos about anime gatekeeping, is that when it comes to understanding how we can interact and coexist in a given space, we have to first understand where we are. What is the space that we're inhabiting? If we're inhabiting a card game space, a trading card game, this space is about connection, communication, and creativity. That's it. Because how the deck that you build, be it commanded or constructed, is sometimes a reflection of you. Same applies in fighting game spaces, among other spaces. There's always a sense of communication and continuity, and I keep going with the C words, when it comes to these nerd spaces. And while I can understand that there are people within those spaces, men who are toxic, men who make women uncomfortable, and men don't know how to properly communicate. That is a systematic issue of them, but it's not a reflection of the space. Regardless of whether or not you went to an LGS, that same person that you don't find, appealing or you're not comfortable around would be true anywhere else you go with them, because that's a personal issue. That is a person-by-person case. And in relation to my biggest gripe, and I feel like a lot of people's gripes that they try to voice and get talked down to for being misogynistic or being, bigoted, is that they don't want to be judged for how they interact in their own spaces. This is where they go for their sense of escapism, for their comfortability, and you're making them uncomfortable. And you could argue that, well, why is it making you uncomfortable, make other people uncomfortable? It's because you're prescribing to the idea that things that they do as a natural thing, things that they have no ill intentions are like these microaggressions that try to force women to not feel safe in these spaces. Ultimately, if you really want to bridge a gap in the nerd spaces for men and women, we have to first understand that men and women think differently, but also men and women are both, to the degree, kind of degenerate. We all know about the stories of book talk. We all know the stories of waifu playmats. We all know the stories of certain sleeves. We have seen some wild things if you're in any nerd spaces. But the idea that we have to go out of our way to kind of like disavow what's basically just an expression of creativity. And like everything, not everything is black and white. and even Pleasant Kenobi has stated it's not black and white. But my issue is that more often than not, we go down the path of overcorrection. Because it wouldn't surprise me, given in a few years or so, I could see some stores trying to ban anime or artistic playmats because of a few pearl clutchers. And that's the world I do not want to be a part of. I will fight tooth and nail to stop any pearl clutching in my nerd spaces. Those spaces exist for escapism for everyone, not just you. You're being selfish, and I will stand on that. GG's, guys.
Stop what you're doing and listen.